I got into a car accident. Just moments before I died, I found out that the son we adopted for years was actually my husband's illegitimate child. When I opened my eyes again, both my husband and the child were standing in front of me again. Honey, let's adopt him. No thanks, let's have your mom adopt him instead. Treat him like another son. The day of the accident was supposed to be a family picnic. My husband Jack was driving, and I was in the backseat with our son Jason. As we were about to exit a tunnel, Jason said the car door on his side felt a bit loose and asked me to check it out. I didn't think much of it, unbuckled my seatbelt and leaned over. But before I could find anything, the car suddenly spun out of control and veered off to the side. Instinctively, I shielded Jason, protecting him from the shattering glass of the rear window. But since I wasn't buckled up, I got thrown out of the car during the violent crash as it tumbled off the highway. As I lay there, barely alive, I overheard a chilling conversation. Dad, is she dead? Don't worry, she's definitely dead, said a man in a voice cold enough to make me feel like a stranger. Great. So can we bring my real mom home now? No rush, let's handle her affairs first. Oh yeah, there's the insurance money too. Dad, once we get the payout, can we go on a family trip abroad? Mom always wanted to visit Korea. Sure, whatever you and your mom want. My anger couldn't stop the life from fading away, and finally, I unwillingly closed my eyes. Perhaps out of pity, fate granted me another chance. I found myself reborn on the day Jack brought his son into our home. Everything was still possible. We'd been married for 7 years by then. Jack had just returned from a business trip with a little boy. It was the darling son I'd doted on in my past life, Jason. Seeing Jack's mom being so familiar and affectionate with Jason made me want to laugh bitterly. So the whole family knew, except me. Jack entrusted Jason to his mom and took me into the living room. Jane, there's something I want to discuss with you. In the living room, Jack talked about Jason's tragic childhood. He was 5 years old, with unknown parents, raised by his grandmother until she passed away, after which he became a wandering orphan. The poor kid's story tugged at my heart, and before I knew it, I agreed to adopt him years ago, after hearing the same story. But now, no way was I going to let him have his way. Jack continued with his rehearsed lines, then tentatively suggested, Darling, let's adopt him. Just as he said it, his mom glanced into the living room. So predictable. Smiling, I said gently, Don't bother, let's have your mom adopt him. Treat him like your brother. Jack looked like he'd swallowed a fly, awkwardly stitching together a reply. Don't be ridiculous, mom's already quite old. His mother peeked nervously at Jack from the room, having heard every word I said. Her face turned pale. Before they could say more, I rubbed my temples. I'm really tired today. I think I'll go to bed. Lying in bed, sleep wouldn't come. Back then, I never realized the malice my husband harbored. Thinking back to when Jason was 5, so, it was right after we got married that he cheated. Jack's dad died early, so his mom raised him alone. When I met him, his family was still in debt. But since he seemed honest and treated me well, I didn't care. When we first got married, we agreed to focus on work and hold off on having kids. We put it off until Jason came along. He was so well behaved and pitifully sweet that I genuinely welcomed him. But later, when I got pregnant, Jason ran away several times, once narrowly avoiding danger. I tried talking to him, but he was very resistant. Jack's mom then packed her things, crying that she was taking him back to the countryside to not be in my way. Jack acted torn, repeatedly saying we should wait until Jason was older before having a child. The stress of it all led to my miscarriage. Thinking of those times, it's clear they purposely wanted to kill my baby. In the darkness, a single tear slipped from my eye. That accident and the insurance, they were planning to kill me for the payout. When did this idea come to Jack? After bringing Jason home? Or was our marriage a scam from the start? Was the real mom they spoke of Jason's biological mother? Who is she? Today is Saturday, and I woke up early to see Jason already seated obediently on the sofa. Seeing me, he sweetly greeted, Hi, Auntie. I watched him for a long time, then slowly reached out to pinch his cheek. Jason didn't dare to move, and Jack, upon entering and seeing my action, looked alarmed and hurried to stop me. Jane, let's eat. I let go of Jason's cheek, which was now slightly red. Such a cute child. I smiled cryptically. The concern in Jack's eyes was too obvious to hide. He tousled Jason's hair and lovingly guided him to the table. After breakfast, Jack brought up the adoption again. Let me think about it. Casually dropping these words, I gathered my things and left the house. Once outside, I headed to the city library. The library was Jack's favorite place, preserving an old-school book borrowing system. Each book had its own card for borrowers to sign, meaning I could see the names of everyone who borrowed any book. I went straight to the children's section, flipping through each book to check the names on the borrowing cards. Jason also loved reading. When we first brought him home in my past life, he mentioned a few classics. When I asked where he read those, he said it was at a neighbor's house. Intuition told me he loved reading, and the books he read probably had something to do with Jack. But Jack occasionally lent me his library card, so I knew what books he borrowed, and he wouldn't use his own card anyway. Could it be his real mom he mentioned? I desperately compared the library cards of a few books, trying to find the person who borrowed them all at once. The names were unfamiliar, but I noticed a pattern. 2 people appeared on the borrowing cards at different times for these books. One name made my heart skip a beat. Lisa. That last name got me thinking. Jack, Lisa, Jason. Could it be her? A name alone proved nothing. I knew I needed more evidence. When I got home, I saw my mom cooking dinner. Unlike usual, I didn't help out. I was once someone who didn't lift a finger at home, mostly leaving chores to the housekeeper. But ever since Mom moved in, she insisted on doing the chores herself to save money. So, with Jack's persuasion, I had to let the housekeeper go. Jane, Mom thinks it's your house. If you let her do some housework, she'll feel more settled, Jack said. True. Our house was one my parents bought for us, and the property deed was under their names. Jack's explanation sounded nice, but she was his biological mom. I couldn't actually boss her around. So, every time I saw her cooking after work, I'd always go to help. The end result? I ended up doing most of the housework at home. But today, I didn't have the slightest intention to lift a finger. Mom was clearly unhappy, and made a lot of noise in the kitchen. After dinner, I heard her making a racket with the dishes in the sink. Jason, ever so well behaved, said, Uncle, Auntie, let me help Grandma with the dishes. I do it often at home. I patted Jason's head. Hey, don't start calling people Grandma. Mom's still young. Calling her Grandma makes her seem old. Jason hadn't expected me to say that. Being just a 5-year-old kid, he timidly hid behind Jack. Mom came out from the kitchen, saw us all on the couch, and immediately started massaging her back. Getting old. Just a little movement and there goes the backache, she complained. But I wasn't buying it. I acted like I didn't get it and played along. Yeah, you are getting older. With those looks, it's no wonder the kid calls you Grandma. Mom's mouth twitched. I finally acknowledged her as Jason's grandma. She didn't dare argue back now, fearing I'd deny it again. But agreeing was hard for her. She had me young, and she wasn't that old. Since living with us, she'd been pampered, dressing well, and always got compliments for looking young. So, being called a little old lady by me didn't sit well with her. Jack, hearing our banter, was pleased. Jane, you've agreed to adopt Jason. Let's go look into it. No need. I have a friend who's well informed about adoptions. I'll just bring the paperwork and get it done. Jack knew most of my friends were department leaders, so he relaxed. Remembering the name that had slipped from his lips earlier, I calmly asked, is the kid's last name Smith? Jack's smile faded a bit, turning cautious. He nodded. Yeah, Smith. Who's he named after, his dad or his mom? I pressed. His grandma. She raised him single-handedly. Jack seemed ready for this question, answering smoothly. To avoid any future issues, I didn't want to change his name. Just call him Jason then. Is that okay? I nodded in agreement. You're so kind, Jane. Really kind, Jack exclaimed, trying to hug me, but I dodged. Jack chuckled awkwardly. In the bathroom, with the door locked, I turned on my phone. I'd previously paid to install a virus program on Jack's phone to monitor his activities. I was raring to sift through his messages and calls, and among his nearly 4,000 contacts, I saw a familiar name, Lisa, listed as a colleague, with no chat history between them. My hands shook as I clenched my fingers tightly before clicking on Lisa's account. The profile picture seemed to be her, calm, with long, straight, light brown hair. A picture of serenity. Her Twitter was also filled with numerous photos, all normal, everyday life with no hint of a child. But I believed, coincidences like this don't just happen. Sunday morning, Jack was called to work overtime, barely eating breakfast before heading out. Mom watched my leisurely attitude with disapproval and commented, Jack's got it rough, not even resting on weekends while you live in comfort. I swallowed another bite of my bun, flashing her a bright smile. That's what you get graduating from a top university. Life's just easy. Jack's limited by his schooling. You couldn't give him much of a boost. He's got a hustle to make things work. Mom's face turned pale and then red, hands frozen on her chopsticks. She wanted to argue, but found no words, because every word I uttered was true. I just hadn't said it out loud before to spare their feelings. After breakfast, I headed back to my parents' place, I nearly forgot what today was until Mom called to remind me. Today was the day my parents decided to transfer the house we live in under Jack and my name. Jack never mentioned it, but his actions told me it mattered. Whenever he had drinks with friends or worked overtime late into the night, I'd always tell him to ease up. Our incomes were more than enough for the family, but he said he didn't feel comfortable living in a house owned by my parents. He wanted to give me a real home. Back then, I was really touched. I even told him not to think that way since my mom and dad never looked down on him. Plus, being an only child, I didn't think it was necessary to be so particular, but he wouldn't listen and kept working his tail off. Gradually, my parents feared the house situation might affect our relationship, so after all these years, they finally decided to transfer the ownership to both of us. When I got home and saw my dad taking a bunch of pills as usual, I swallowed my grievances. My parents are getting old, and learning about an illegitimate child would probably be too much for them. I had to make up some excuse to keep them from bringing up the house topic. Though my dad looked puzzled, he didn't ask much. My mom noticed I was home and smiled, but her tone was a bit sarcastic. The busy man is back. Gone all day, thanks to Jason helping out at least. Without looking up, I subtly countered, can't not be busy, or those adoption papers won't just fall from the sky. Jack, looking happy, quickly came over to help with my bag and shoes. Mom couldn't hold it in and asked, now with a much nicer tone, is everything settled? Can Jason be added to our household registry? I glanced at her and replied with a slight hum. Do you think these departments run like your family business, that you can decide just like that? If only we knew someone who could help, then I wouldn't be running around asking friends. That jab left both Mom and Jack looking a bit embarrassed. In the past, I'd compromise at every turn, considering their fragile pride, never saying a word about what I did behind the scenes, but they took everything for granted. Jack eased up quickly, acting casual, and asked everyone to sit down. Jane's right, these procedures aren't completed overnight. I sat down on the couch, tired, and got ready to use the lines I had prepared. Michelle said it's going to be tough, and she might need to grease some palms. Jack had looked into adoption procedures himself, and knew it wasn't easy, especially when the kid already had relatives. So he didn't doubt my words and eagerly asked how much it would cost. $500,000. What? Mom was the first to stand up angrily. That's robbery, asking so much for such a thing. Isn't she your friend? Is she just taking advantage of you? Jack didn't disagree, and seemed to share Mom's sentiments. I couldn't help but sneer a bit. In my past life, Michelle spent quite a bit helping with this. I pitched in from my dowry, worried it might be too much for Mom and Jack. Now though, I wasn't going to budge. If it's too expensive, then forget it. The money isn't for Michelle, it's for boosting connections. Why insist on that title? The $500,000 was a number I said intentionally. Most of our savings were tied up in investments and term deposits, and we couldn't touch them before they matured. We didn't have that much cash on hand. That money was Mom's retirement savings, which she had been holding onto tightly. She never had a formal job, so no social security. After moving in with us, she kept mentioning in front of me how unlucky she was, envying my parents. Your dad and Mom got lucky, with heaps of retirement pay. Their life must be cozy. That's what she often said. Though Jack and I reassured her not to worry, and that would take care of her, she still always seemed worried. Finally, Jack and I decided to give her $1,000 a month as compensation for her help with household chores. He said it was a way of showing our respect. Honestly, I wasn't too keen on this, but with the two of them constantly teaming up, I eventually agreed. After all, Jack and I had good income, so that $1,000 didn't matter much. So, Mom managed to save up some cash, but now, I need to get my hands on that money. Leaving the three of them with mixed emotions, I headed to my room alone. I pulled out my phone and checked on Jack again. He still hadn't been in contact with the woman named Lisa. Looks like it's time to visit Jack's company. The next morning, breakfast was pretty quiet. I remember in my past life, around this time, Jason was really trying to impress me since I agreed to adopt him. But now, after my cold responses, he wouldn't dare speak up in my presence. Mom noticed and felt sorry for him, piling meat onto his plate at every meal until he was stuffed. I just watched with a smile, not interfering at all. In the past life, when we first brought Jason home, I had him checked thoroughly at the hospital for health reasons. The doctor said his blood sugar was high, and if not managed, it could turn into diabetes, requiring lifelong insulin and impacting his growth. I took the doctor's advice seriously and followed a strict diet and routine for Jason. I limited his intake of high-calorie stuff like cake and fried chicken. I also enrolled him in a basketball class and swim lessons for exercise. However, in Mom's eyes, my efforts seemed like I was depriving him and being harsh. She firmly believed kids wouldn't get diabetes, and that doctors were just trying to scare us to make money. Jason also seemed scared of me. Even Jack was critical of me at one point. But when it came to a kid's health, I explained patiently. Eventually, though Mom didn't get it, Jack became somewhat convinced. Under my careful watch, Jason grew up healthy. Remembering this, I watched Jason devour fried chicken and soda, then looked away. This time around, I'm staying out of it. I'll watch with my own eyes what Jason will grow into without my care and intervention, raised by your standards of love. Before I walked out, Jack stopped me. Last night, he had already discussed it with his mom and decided to cough up 500 grand. But he said the money was all in the bank. He had this troubled look, hesitating, hoping I'd step in like always, either use my dowry or ask my parents for it. Back then, he'd come up with all sorts of excuses to make me fork over money, like some relative from his hometown needed medical treatment, or he wanted a new car. Sometimes he had to impress the boss with a gift. It didn't take long for him to burn through my dowry. Once it was gone, he stopped bugging me. But now, I just watched coldly and stayed silent. He seemed a bit annoyed and said, "We can't ask Mom for money. She saved it the hard way." I shot back, "Then forget it. After all, even if he's not on your family register, isn't he still part of the Jack family?" I meant what I said, and Jack was momentarily taken aback as I finished my point. "Think carefully about the kid. I need to get back to Tom today." In the afternoon, Jack called, saying his mom agreed to use her 500 grand in savings, but we'd have to pay her back once our investments matured. I happily agreed. Not like they'll have a chance to see that investment mature anyway. At noon, I left work early and went to Jack's office. In the past life, he walked all over my parents' resources, making a name for himself in finance. He even became the general manager. Everyone knows if you don't have cash at home, don't mess with finance. But Jack, thinking the world of himself, insisted on this path. Before we met, his performance was so bad he almost got the boot. I used my connections, classmates, friends, and relatives to help him scope sales. That's how he gradually made a name. But little did I know I was raising a backstabbing leech. It was lunch break and I went straight to his desk. He was surprised to see me since it's been nearly 3 years since the last time I visited. Back then, I'd swing by to have lunch, or leave together after work. Many of his clients were my buddies, so I'd even join him for meetings. What did he used to say? "Jane, every time I know you're coming, I can't focus on work out of sheer excitement. You're the biggest distraction to my work." He looked so sincere, I believed him. I stopped coming to let him focus. When he saw me, an anxious look crossed Jack's face before questioning me. "What are you doing here? Can't I be here?" My response snapped him back to reality, and he forced a smile. "I'm just pleasantly surprised. Let's go have lunch." He wanted to hustle me out quickly, not that I'd let him have his way. "No need," I ordered takeout. "It'll be here soon. Let's head to the downstairs lounge." The building had loads of employees, most of whom had lunch in the lounge. After we sat down, Jack subtly pried into why I suddenly showed up. "Worried about me checking in on you?" I teased, eyeing him. His mouth twitched uneasily. "Of course not. I welcome it. The more, the better." The lounge filled up, and then I spotted that familiar face, Lisa. She was alone, seated not far from us. Jack remained composed without a hint of unease. Catching a glimpse of Lisa casually eating, I suddenly said, "Oh, by the way, I'm pregnant." The volume was enough for those nearby to hear. Lisa's hand slipped, and her spoon clattered to the floor. Jack glanced over instinctively, then quickly looked away. Lisa made enough of a scene for others to notice, but he dared not be blatant. "What a giveaway." Jack frowned, leaning closer to whisper, "Jane, could you be pregnant? We haven't even." "Just kidding, look how scared you are," I whispered back. Jack seemed confused, his handsome features slightly distorted. Since I knew the answer, I ignored him and focused on my meal. There's no doubt Lisa is the mom. Jack came home late that day, probably busy explaining to Lisa, but I kept busy this afternoon too. I told Mom to withdraw her 500 grand in cash for me. I also learned a lot about Lisa. For instance, she's a finance specialist. You know, most places strictly forbid office romances between finance and marketing because of sensitivity. And Jack just happens to be in marketing. Back home, I was tied up with those tasks. Mom didn't look too happy. During dinner, she glanced at me repeatedly, sighing and cuddling her favorite grandson. "For us poor folk, life ain't easy. It took years to save that money, and now it's gone. 500 grand. It hurts right here," she said, clutching her chest. Seeing me silent, she spoke up again. "Jane, don't take it to heart. I'm not like your in-laws. If they gave 500 grand, they wouldn't bat an eye. But not me. That 500 grand is my lifeline. Hearing her mention my parents, I knew what she wanted. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction. I chuckled. Hey, it's 'cause this child is from the Jack family, not us Smiths, isn't it? Your real grandson. Can't you spare a bit? I made sure to emphasize real grandson, and saw Mom's face change color. I turned around and looked at Jason, who seemed a bit confused. Jason, your grandma is worried about spending too much money on you. It's making her feel terrible. You better behave, or she might just kick you out. I scared him so much. Jason stopped eating and his lips started to curl downwards. He was about to burst into tears, and Mom quickly started comforting him in a fluster. Don't say things like that. What do you mean, Bort? Sweetie, don't cry. Grandma would never kick you out. This is your home. Don't cry. Don't cry. I was quite pleased with the chaos my words caused. After eating, I put down my bowl and went back to my room. The day before Valentine's, Jack said he was heading out of town to meet a client and wouldn't be back that night. I knew today was Lisa's birthday. Last year around this time, she tweeted, saying she didn't want to spend her birthday alone the next year. The picture showed half of her lonely face. I remembered it clearly. Around that time last year, I got 2 last-minute tickets to a piano master's concert and begged Jack to go with me. He mentioned he had to chase after a big client deal. I felt bad he had to work late, but I also wanted him with me, so I convinced him not to go. I even promised I'd help him catch another big deal through my friends. This year, Jack must spend Lisa's birthday with her, no matter what. Jane, don't worry. I'll definitely be back for Valentine's Day. Jack reassured me. I smiled and saw him off. That night, Lisa's Twitter updated. Love allows me to bear all grievances. A happy day. Wishing next birthday my family can be there. The picture was careful, not a trace of Jack. Valentine's Day, while Jack was still on his way back, I saw a photo of him with Lisa. In the picture, they wore matching outfits, sweetly checking into a hotel, holding hands going to eat. Just like an ordinary couple. I thought I'd be angry or sad, but when I saw it, I felt nothing. I understood all my sadness, and anger turned into hatred after that tragic accident in my past life. I just want them all to pay the price. Jason's adoption papers came through. Thanks to my guidance and subtle hints, the neighbors didn't just assume it was me and Jack who adopted him, unlike the previous life. Mom played with Jason in front of the kindergarten, and when she saw me, she called me over. The paperwork's done, right? Now I can relax. I was just telling them, finally, I have a grandson. I had told Mom not to say anything before it was finalized, to avoid complications. She held it in until today to share with her old friends. Mom beamed and pushed me to take out the household registration proof. Neighbors gathered around, eager. But as it unfolded, her face changed instantly. Next to Jason's mother's name was Mom's. What's this about? I pretended to be surprised too. Must be a mistake with the staff. How'd it end up being your son? No way, no way. This has to be corrected ASAP. This isn't right. The generational positions are messed up. Mom was anxious. I feigned difficulty. This kind of thing isn't easy to change. Plus who knows how long it'd take back and forth. Kindergarten's enrollment is coming soon. If we delay further, Jason might miss school. Maybe just leave it as it is. Doesn't matter whose name it's under, right? We're all family anyway. Neighbors agreed with me. Exactly, it's adoption anyway. Whether it's under your name or the couple's, does it matter? Honestly, under your name is better. It won't affect your son and daughter-in-law's biological kids in the future. Neighbors were already finding it strange for such a perfect couple to suddenly adopt a child. This made more sense to them. Mom was at a loss, repeatedly saying no, but quietly she admitted defeat. What kind of mess is this, becoming a grandma so young? A friendly neighbor called over the playing Jason. Hey kid, come here, call her Mom now. Chubby little Jason looked up, puzzled. How did grandma become Mom? Just then, Jack came home from work and the neighbor pointed him out. Look, your big bro's back. Seeing Jack's thunderstruck expression almost made me burst into laughter. After the dramatic scene, the three of us went back home, but it seemed I was the only one in a good mood. Unexpected changes like this were hard for them to accept. I pretended to comfort them. We'll let the kid attend school first. We can fix it down the line. They couldn't do much, reluctantly agreeing. Afterward, Mom was keen on not taking Jason out. Every time they went out, people teased saying Jason should call her Mom. It annoyed her greatly. Jack avoided taking Jason out with him, steering clear of awkward titles. Unlike before, where he'd willingly take him to school and the park, being the good dad image. The reasons behind the drastic change weren't just titles, but work too. At night, Jack came back looking exhausted. After mulling over, he couldn't resist talking to me. We hadn't spoken for a few days due to the whole Jason registration situation. I knew why he was here. Those major clients left for someone else. Jane, aren't they your friends? Can you talk to them? I shook my head, pretending to be helpless. You told me to stay out of your job, remember? So later, I lost touch with them. What? Didn't manage to keep them. I added insult to injury. Back then, he used my connections, but was afraid people would say he got ahead thanks to me. So, he didn't want me mingling with my friends. But now, he suddenly remembers me. Jack didn't take my words well and left grudgingly. He's been under a lot of pressure recently, trying to get the VP spot, and losing clients left and right hasn't helped. So, I decided to give him a big gift. I told Jack I arranged for a major client to visit his company, because I wanted a front row seat to the drama. He happily took me along. Once we were there, I knew my gift had arrived from the looks people gave us. Oblivious, Jack was still subtly showing off to his co-workers. Someone asked quietly if the client was referred by me. Jack showed some displeasure, not wanting to admit he relied on his wife. A female co-worker, unable to contain herself, dug a pile of photos from the trash and slapped them onto the table. Some guys not only climb up using their wife's connections, but even cheat. Worse than animals. What nonsense are you talking? Jack snapped coldly. The pictures are on full display, and they are in your email too. What more do you need to deny? The co-worker threw the photos at him and walked away. Jack sensed the gravity of the situation, looking at his co-worker's varied expressions. Anxiety crept in as he lowered his gaze to the photos, him and Lisa, intimately caught on camera. He didn't dare to look up, as if time stood still. When Jack's boss showed up with an unpleasant demeanor to call him out, everyone snapped out of it. I, after delivering a slap to Jack, kept up a facade of being distraught. With sympathetic glances from everyone around, I quietly took my car keys and left. I drove back to my parents' place, singing along to the radio, and laid it all out for them. Jack cheated and even has a love child, so we're getting a divorce. My parents were shocked initially, but seeing I wasn't overly emotional, they calmed down and fully supported me. I mailed Jack the paternity test and divorce papers at his office, then blocked all his contacts. I didn't need his apologies. I certainly didn't care to hear his excuses. I knew Jack would probably fight the divorce. After all, he had nothing, and without me, he'd be left with nowhere to live. But as he saw his client list shrinking and his efforts crumbling, he realized the reality. It took him some time, but he finally agreed to the divorce. I set our appointment at the courthouse. That day, friends and family accompanied me to the registrar's office. Seeing Jack after a while, I noticed he wasn't the confident guy he used to be. He got off the bus, clothes a bit disheveled. Well, I did take the car. As he awkwardly approached me, he managed to squeeze out a couple of tears. Jane, I'm sorry, please let me explain. Jason was just an accident. Despite his efforts, I had no patience left for his words. Enough, I said. Sign the papers. He hesitated. What? You got an issue with the property division? Jane, after all these years, you really gonna be this cold? You want me left with nothing? Exactly. Is there something wrong with that? I asked. The house and car were my parents'. You secretly spent our shared assets on your mistress and your kid. Consider yourself lucky. I'm not seeking compensation. I spoke loud enough that everyone around could hear, and they looked at Jack with complete contempt. But, no buts. You sign, and I'll promise to not interfere with your clients anymore. He came today only because he was cornered. His affairs scandal cost him the VP slot. In a company forbidding workplace romances, Lisa quit to save her job, leaving Jack to fend for a brood. His valuable clients, most connected to me anyway, led him here through my pressure to maintain performance. He didn't want to lose me, his lifeline, yet his company's ultimatums left him no choice. Failing to meet targets by month end, he'd face pay cuts, or even job loss. In the end, he signed, and we finalized the divorce. With the divorce papers in hand, he tried to speak again, but I slapped him hard. That's for what you owe me. Shocked, ready to hit back, my friends pinned him down, leaving him open for my second slap. That's for what you owe my parents. And a third, this is for having no conscience. My hand shook after I finished. Amidst the chaos, Jack's mom, Lisa, and Jason showed up, their quarrels filling the room, with Jack's mom's wailing being the loudest. She demanded I return 50 grand. 50 grand? What 50 grand? I had no clue. Her money, her withdrawal, entirely her doing. How is it connected to me? Realizing my trick, she lunged to hit me, but got held back. Lisa chimed in. You've gone too far. From the start, you plotted against us. You took Jack's money, and now even the elder's cash. Aren't you afraid of karma? She couldn't go unnoticed, and her face soon bore a new mark. Everything I took was mine. Without me, Jack's a pauper. If you value it so much, hold on tight. She held her face, trying to argue, but my friend yanked her hair, leaving her yelping. The crowd dissolved into chaos. When security separated us, the Jack family members all looked roughed up and wounded. Jack was still pointing his finger at me, shouting threats. Jane, you knew about Jason from the start, didn't you? Wow, you're ruthless. You did all this just to leave me with nothing. I just wanted you back where you belonged. Back to how you were before you met me, with nothing. But it's still not enough. I knew they'd be stubborn about moving out. So I sold the house dirt cheap to a real estate agency. The agency showed up with a crew, trashed all their stuff, threw it out, and dragged them out too, warning them never to come back. It was such a spectacle that someone filmed it and posted it online, causing quite the buzz. Without a place to live, they ended up at Jack's employee dorm. It's barely 20 square meters, cramped for 4 people, but they had no choice. I still occasionally peek at Jack's phone through the program I installed before. I found out he's rarely home, and that Lisa is hysterically arguing with him. It's the usual in-law drama, money woes. Jack's mom called Lisa a jinx, blaming her for their miserable lives. Lisa fought back, even getting Jason to hate his grandma. Jack is torn up, stuck in the middle. He's even started writing me apology letters, trying to get back together. But soon enough, he'll start to miss these days filled with fights. Which finance company doesn't have a little dirt? Especially when it comes to big money and performance deals. I sent evidence of Jack's work bribery and false tax claims on expenses to their headquarters. As soon as HQ issued an investigation notice, the domestic branch acted fast, throwing Lisa under the bus, reporting to the authorities. Given their secretive relationship, there was too much shady business between them. Once they got arrested, I went to report to the police, with my family supporting me. I was suspicious that Jack and Lisa plotted together for murder and insurance fraud. Turns out, without my knowledge, I had 2 accidental insurance policies, both naming Jack as the beneficiary. I also provided one of Jack's private phone numbers. Honestly, from monitoring his phone and noticing the zero interaction with Lisa, I knew he had to have a secret number. The police collected evidence quickly and soon confirmed their crimes. They had used that private number to detail plans on how they would kill me and make it look like an accident for the insurance payout. The police showed me all their chats. Because of past experiences, I knew they'd been plotting for ages, but I hadn't realized they attempted it once before. Right after Jason was born, I just got lucky and survived, which made them even more cautious afterward. The sporadic chat logs gave me a full picture of everything. Their affair was simple. Back then, Jack had just married me. I had a better degree and family background, which made him insecure. He married me to dodge 20 years of hard work, but jokes from friends broke him down. So when the new colleague, Lisa, showed interest, he took the bait. He started keeping a mistress, thinking it made him superior to me. In countless messages, he mocked my innocence to Lisa, but when Lisa pushed for a real relationship, he shot her down, blatantly stating he married me to inherit my family's wealth. That's when the wicked plan got pitched. Leaving the police station felt surreal. Everything had finally settled. I didn't attend Jack and Lisa's sentencing. My dad told me they cried in court, blaming and accusing each other. Both claimed to be seduced into the scheme, each insisting the other was the main culprit. Ignoring court decorum, they started yelling insults. Meanwhile, I was preparing for my relocation abroad. I had a great opportunity for promotion and a raise, but it meant transferring to the international headquarters. I once sacrificed that for family, but now, I'm grabbing this chance. My retired parents decided to move overseas with me. Hearing Jack got life and Lisa got 15 years didn't stir anything in me anymore. They deserved it. Before leaving, I took my parents for a health check, and we bumped into Jack's mom and Jason. Jason turned into a chubby little kid, so different from the lively teen he used to be. And Jack's mom, looking much older, was throwing a fit at the doctor, saying the hospital was scamming them, claiming a kid couldn't have diabetes. She ticked off the doctor, who sternly said Jason's illness was very serious. Without proper treatment, his life was in danger. A fellow patient filled me in, saying the two had been there before. The first time, after Jason suddenly vomited and passed out. The doctor tried explaining the situation, but Jack's mom didn't believe it. This time, Jason's condition got worse, fainting outside and being brought in by a good Samaritan. Even the police got involved, and their relationship was a mess. The older woman looked too old to be called mom by the kid, but when police checked their IDs, it said they were mother and son, clearly not a respectable family. Speculated the fellow patient. I just smiled and stayed quiet, watching Jack's mom make a scene. Eventually, she left with Jason, looking pretty defeated. If you think about it, there's no way they can continue treatment. Jack's mom was ignorant in the past, and even if she gets it now, they probably can't afford it. As for how this kid will turn out, well, that's no longer my concern. After finishing the checkups with my parents, I quickly bought plane tickets to go abroad. Sitting on the plane, looking at the blue sky, I felt genuinely happy for the first time in a while. As the plane slowly lifted off the ground, I realized that past events shouldn't consume my time anymore. My future is bound to be vast and full of endless possibilities.